So you know the old riddle. What happens when an irresistible force meets an immovable object? Well, in Taiji Chuan theory, the immovable object appears to be yielding and giving way. But what's really happening is that it is simply redirecting the energy into a harmless direction. This redirecting energy is another kinetic concept known as yu, which is often translated as yield or roll back. Now, one more time, I'm going to show you the movement in its entirety, and then we're going to break it down piece by piece.
Lu energy can be used to deflect and neutralize incoming forces.
Start with the feet together, hands relaxed by your sides. The knees are slightly soft, the hips are a little soft, the head floating up towards the sky like a balloon filled with helium. All the weight shifts over to your right foot, and the left foot floats upward and then steps out to the side about shoulder width. And then center the weight evenly over both feet. After the hands rise up to about shoulder height, the knees soften and everything floats down, getting heavier, hands press down to about hip height. All right, number one, turn and deflect. Shift your weight to the right foot and rotate towards the left, about 60 degrees. All of my weight is here on the right foot, about 90% there, only about 10% on the left heel. Number two, deflect in an empty step. Now my weight begins to shift forward onto the left foot. The right foot gets empty and steps all the way into this empty step here. Now my weight is 90% on the left foot and only about 10% tapping down with the right toes. Number three, step out. The right leg steps out just to the side of that front brown circle in the front of your mat, landing heel first. Remember, you land sort of empty, so most of your weight is in the back foot. But as you settle down, the weight distributes about 60% on your back foot and 40% over your front foot. The toes in the front foot turn inward about 30 degrees. Number four, draw an arc and catch. So here I shift my weight forward onto that front foot. Now my weight is 60% on the front leg and the left foot stays about 40%, still in the same place as it was before. And number five, sit back and deflect. Here I reverse direction and sit back into the left hip, the weight going to about 60% on the back foot, 40% on the front foot, keeping the front leg slightly bent and the toes turned in. Finally, back to neutral. I shift my weight all the way back so I can step side by side. The hands float down. I shift my weight back to the right foot and step the feet together. Head floating up, spine getting longer, finishing. This time through, we're going to take a look at what the hands and arms, basically the upper body, is doing. Number one, turn and deflect. So as I rotate towards the left, my hands are just trailing, deflecting outward, the palms down, the fingertips pointing to the front. Number two, deflect in an empty step. My hands are going to stay pretty much in the same position, palms down, fingers pointing to the front, and the elbows stay slightly bent, not locked out. Number three, step out. My waist is going to start the action here, turning slightly to the left, and my hands trail with the motion. Now again, make sure your torso stays upright, your head floating up towards the ceiling like a balloon filled with helium. Number four, hands draw an arc and catch. Right? My weight shifts forward and my hands draw an arc in the air, moving forward. My right hand at about nose height, my left hand down at shoulder height, palms forward, fingers pointing up. I turn my waist slightly to the right to finish off this movement. Number 5, sit back and deflect. So I'm going to reverse direction, sitting back down into my left hip, sink and turn the waist to the left. Both hands deflect and neutralize downward. The left hand at hip level, the right hand right in front of the body, palms down, fingers pointing forward. And then finish up, go back to neutral, step back, let the hands float out about shoulder height, and then float down. Easy breath, shift the weight back to the right foot, and finish. Okay, third time through. This is the pass where we put a lot of imagery and energy into your movements. Liu is a technique where you are connecting with an incoming force, but not fighting it. It's more like redirecting it into a harmless position. So as you do each section, imagine and feel that connection. Number 1, turn and deflect. So as I turn here, I'm preparing for the big connection that's coming up. My hands still feeling like there's something there that I'm touching. Then deflect in an empty step. I shift my weight forward, I turn and look in the direction that I'm shifting towards, and then look back. My eyes carrying the spirit towards the incoming force. Step out, number 3. The hands go forward, my waist begins to turn, I'm preparing for that big catch. Number 4, draw an arc and catch. So my hands make a big loop. It's a circular kind of motion, reaching out and imagining that you're catching your opponent at the wrist and elbow. And then finally, a big deflection. The energy is coming towards you, you sit back and deflect it downward into a slightly harmless place to your side. Now that that's over, go back to your neutral position. Step back and let the hands float out, the energy dissipating, the hands floating down by your sides, the feet stepping back together, the head getting taller, the spine getting longer, the breath coming out, and that's the second technique. Once you're comfortable on this side, start practicing on the other side.